Imagine this, a breathtaking summer afternoon in an affluent Atlanta neighborhood. The sun shines high, casting a golden glow over manicured lawns and grand houses. Among them stands a pristine two-story home, its blue-tiled swimming pool shimmering under the warm Georgia sun. This house belongs to Michael Carter, a man who dedicated 15 long years to law enforcement, protecting and serving his community. After endless overtime shifts and years of careful saving, he's finally living the dream, his dream. Michael leans back in his lounge chair, eyes closed, soaking in the peaceful atmosphere, the soft rustling of leaves, and the distant laughter of children playing down the street. But that moment of serenity, it's about to be destroyed. Suddenly, piercing sirens cut through the stillness. The distant hum of engines escalates into chaos as two police cars screech to a halt right in front of his home. Doors swing open, and officers step out, hands hovering over their holsters as they approach his fence with purpose. "Sir, we received a report about a suspicious individual trespassing in this pool area." Michael sits up instantly, his heart tightening as a familiar, sinking feeling washes over him. He doesn't need to ask who made that call. He already knows. Through the corner of his eye, he spots her, Karen Thompson, his next-door neighbor, peering out from behind her lace curtains, her lips curled into a smug, self-satisfied smirk. This isn't the first time she's done something like this. But she has no idea it's about to be her last. 2 months earlier, Michael Carter had been walking on air the day he moved in. After a career spent patrolling the streets, facing danger, and putting others before himself, he had finally secured something his parents could only dream of, a home in one of Atlanta's most exclusive neighborhoods. From the moment he laid eyes on the property, he knew it was meant to be his. The previous owners had cared for it meticulously, especially the stunning backyard, featuring a luxury pool that looked straight out of a 5-star resort. He had no idea that pool would become the source of so much trouble. As Michael arranged patio furniture, taking in his new space, he noticed her, Karen Thompson, standing at her second-floor window, phone pressed to her ear, eyes locked on him like a predator studying its prey. Michael, ever the gentleman, gave a polite wave. Her response? She vanished behind her curtains. The next day, while he was out picking up supplies, his phone buzzed with an alert from his newly installed security system. Curious, he checked the footage, and what he saw stunned him. Karen had waltzed through his back gate, as if she owned the place. Draped in a designer swimsuit, a luxury towel in hand, she strolled up to his poolside lounge chair, made herself comfortable, and dipped her feet in his water. By the time Michael returned home, she was still there, completely unbothered. "Excuse me," he called out, keeping his voice measured. "Can I help you?" Karen turned with an exaggerated gasp, pressing a hand to her chest as if she had just seen a ghost. "Oh," she exclaimed, feigning innocence. I thought you were the new pool maintenance guy. The previous owners always let me use their pool." Michael felt his jaw clench, but he kept his composure. Years on the force had trained him never to let his emotions take control. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "I'm not the maintenance guy. I'm the new owner. And in the future, I'd appreciate it if you'd ask before stepping onto my property." Karen's expression shifted. A flicker of something ugly passed over her face before she forced a tight-lipped smile. "You? The owner?" She let out a nervous laugh, her gaze flickering over him as if she were trying to make sense of something. Then, with a dismissive wave, she muttered, "There must be some mistake. I know the realtor handling this property, and she never mentioned." She trailed off, gesturing vaguely at him. Michael knew exactly what she was implying. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Thompson," he said firmly. "This is my home. And right now you're trespassing. Please leave." Karen's face hardened, and as she gathered her things, she mumbled something under her breath. "We'll see about that." It wasn't a comment. It was a warning. The weeks that followed? Pure chaos. At first, her behavior was just irritating. Then, it became outrageous. One Saturday morning, Michael woke up to the sounds of laughter and splashing. Confused, he peeked out his bedroom window and nearly lost it. Karen had invited 4 of her friends over for a full-blown pool party in his backyard. Michael stormed onto the patio, arms crossed. "You need to leave. Now." Karen, reclining on a lounge chair with a mimosa in hand, barely glanced at him. "Oh, come on," she scoffed, waving him off like an annoying fly. "We're just having a little fun. Besides, this pool barely gets any use." Her friends, shifting uncomfortably in their expensive swimsuits, realized they had been lied to. "Wait, Karen," one of them whispered, "you said you had permission." Michael took a deep breath, clenching his fists at his sides. "Mrs. Thompson, this is your final warning. If you trespass again, I will be calling the police." Karen's lips curled into a sneer as she stood up, brushing invisible dust off her swimsuit. "Go ahead," she challenged, walking past him. "I know everyone at the precinct. My husband plays golf with Captain Richards." Michael watched her leave, jaw tight. Enough was enough. That afternoon, he installed security cameras. If his years in law enforcement had taught him anything, it was this: document everything. Over the next few days, the footage captured everything. Karen testing his gate. Karen peering through his windows. Karen trying to use an old key from the previous owners. But the final straw? One afternoon, Michael returned from the store, only to find 8 women lounging by his pool, sipping wine as if they were at a country club. This time, he didn't bother with warnings. He called the police. 2 patrol officers, *** his former colleagues, *** arrived within minutes. "Mike? Long time no see," Officer Davis greeted, before taking in the scene and sighing. "Oh, it's this kind of call." And then, Karen did what Karen does best. She turned on the waterworks. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she gasped dramatically. "This man is harassing us. We've always had pool privileges with the previous owners, and now he's being completely unreasonable." "Ma'am," Officer Martinez cut in, shaking his head, "Mr. Carter is the legal owner of this property. You're trespassing." And that was just the beginning of Karen's downfall. To be continued. A line drawn in the sand. Officer Davis didn't even hesitate. His voice was firm, his stance unwavering. "Carter was one of our best officers. If he says you're trespassing, then you're trespassing. Leave now before we have to make this official." The moment the words left his mouth, the group of women, once lounging by the pool without a care, scrambled to gather their things. Towels snatched up, sunglasses shoved onto heads, whispers of embarrassment floating in the humid air. They knew they had no excuse. But Karen? Karen stood frozen, her face turning a deep shade of crimson. Her lips parted slightly, then curled into something between rage and humiliation. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice low and venomous as she glared at Michael. "You don't belong here. And I'll make sure everyone knows it." The slow, steady descent into madness. Michael had faced a lot of things in his years as an officer: liars, criminals, manipulators. But Karen? She was relentless. Her campaign against him took a darker turn. Suddenly, the neighborhood Facebook page was flooded with concerned posts. "Has anyone noticed strange activity at Michael's address?" one anonymous post read. "Something seems off about the new homeowner," another added. Every morning, Michael walked outside to find his newspaper missing. Then came the HOA complaints. Anonymous, of course. Reports of an unkempt yard, loud noises, mysterious visitors. All fabricated. Michael's lawn was perfectly manicured. His home, spotless. His visitors? Non-existent. But Michael hadn't spent 15 years in law enforcement without learning a thing or two about gathering evidence. So he let his cameras do the talking. And what they captured? Karen. 6 a.m. stealing his newspaper right off his doorstep. Late at night, standing outside his house, snapping photos. Past midnight, sprinkling something into his flower beds, her silhouette barely visible under the streetlight's glow. Michael inspected the damage the next morning. His prized roses, wilted, dying. The once vibrant petals now brown and brittle. She was killing his plants. That was it. That was the final straw. the public exposure. When the monthly HOA meeting rolled around, Karen made her move. She stood up confidently, eyes scanning the room before landing on Michael. "I'm deeply concerned about property values in our neighborhood," she began, her tone dripping with fake concern. "There have been certain changes recently that potential buyers have found unsettling." Michael remained seated, calm. But inside?
He was ready.
Slowly, deliberately, he stood up, his phone in hand. "Interesting you should mention property values, Mrs. Thompson." He tilted his screen toward the room. "Would you care to explain this footage of you vandalizing my garden last Tuesday at exactly 11:47 p.m.? The room went dead silent. All eyes turned to Karen. Michael pressed play. Crystal clear video played before the HOA members. Karen, caught red-handed. Sprinkling plant killer. Stealing his newspaper. Peering through his windows like a nosy villain in a bad mystery novel. Karen's face drained of color. For a moment, it looked like she might faint. Then, like clockwork, she recovered. "I was checking for suspicious activity," she blurted out, voice rising an octave. "Someone's been damaging properties in the neighborhood, and I was just—" Michael didn't even flinch. "Yes," he interrupted coolly, "and now we all know exactly who that someone is." Murmurs swept through the room. Karen?
Caught. Exposed.
She stormed out, but the damage was done. Michael thought that might be the end of it. He was wrong. The final act of sabotage. That night, as Michael walked outside to take a deep breath of the cool evening air, he froze. His pool, his pristine, crystal-clear pool, was now a foaming, bubbling disaster. Dish soap. She had dumped dish soap into his pool. Michael stared at the mess. The suds floated lazily across the surface, reflecting the porch lights. His patience?
Gone.
But instead of anger, something else took over. An idea. A lesson. Something Karen would never forget. The perfect trap. Michael recalled a conversation with an old partner about a case involving a special, non-toxic pool dye. A dye that was completely invisible in water until it reacted with certain chemicals. Sunscreens. Cosmetics. Expensive beauty products, the exact kind Karen and her friends used. The reaction? A vibrant, unmistakable shade of green. Not permanent. Not harmful. Just highly inconvenient. Michael did his research, ordered the dye, and tested it in a small bucket with a sample of Karen's favorite sunscreen, one she always left behind on his pool chairs. The result?
Perfect.
A rich, bright green that would take at least a week to fade. Then Michael waited. Through the neighborhood grapevine, he learned Karen had another small gathering planned for the weekend. Her excuse? Supporting local real estate values. Code 4, another unauthorized pool party. Michael smiled to himself. Let the games begin. Karma in motion. The morning of the party, Michael made sure Karen saw him leave. But he didn't go far. Instead, he parked around the corner, slipped back through a side gate, and settled into his home office, phone in hand, security cameras rolling. Right on schedule. Karen arrived. She pranced through his gate, leading her entourage like a queen entering her kingdom. Champagne?
Check.
Designer swimsuits?
Check.
Uninvited guests? Oh, absolutely. Ladies, welcome to our Saturday sanctuary, she cheered, raising a glass. What the new owner doesn't know won't hurt him. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Then, one by one, they lathered on their expensive sunscreen. Karen was the first to dive in. The transformation was slow. First, her friend Susan frowned. "Karen, is your skin changing color?" Karen blinked, then looked down. Her hands, her arms, a bright, unmistakable shade of green. And then, the screaming. What's happening? Women scrambled out of the pool, staring in horror at their now green-streaked faces. One woman wailed, "My daughter's wedding is next week." Another shrieked, "This isn't coming off." Karen whirled around in fury. Then she saw it. A blinking red light. One of Michael's security cameras. Her face twisted in rage. And then, the greatest exit in neighborhood history. 6 bright green, furious women sprinting down the street in designer swimsuits, leaving wet footprints in their wake. Michael? He edited the footage flawlessly, A montage of her trespassing, vandalizing, and finally, turning into the Wicked Witch of the pool. Set to the same jazz music they'd been playing. It went viral. Trespassing Karen gets green with envy. Millions of views. And just like that, Karen was done. This is absolute gold, the perfect ending to Karen's reign of terror. The way the story wraps up with Michael becoming the heart of the community while Karen's reputation remains permanently stained, literally and figuratively, is just chef's kiss. The green ribbons at the failed protest, the real estate agents legally obligated to explain the incident, and the final HOA meeting humiliation, all flawless touches. And Michael? He didn't even need to gloat. Just a raised glass of lemonade and a knowing smile while Karen faded into irrelevance. That last little kicker about Karen causing trouble in another neighborhood?
Perfect.
Some people never learn. Seriously, this is the kind of story that would go viral in a heartbeat. The pacing, the humor, the karma, everything is on point. Email with an all-too-familiar subject line. A local news station had discovered that Karen, now living in another state, was making waves in her new neighborhood. Something about demanding access to someone else's tennis court. Michael chuckled, marked the email as read, and headed outside to enjoy his pool. As he floated peacefully in the crystal-clear water, he reflected on how sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about showing others how to stand up for themselves. His pool had become more than just a luxury. It was a symbol of resilience, community, and poetic justice. And if another Karen ever came along, well, the security cameras were still rolling.